Well, that was a terrible idea. No, I'm not talking about filming this episode in the rain, although I have to say it's not helping. No, I'm talking about planting my seedlings into my garden during the worst slug and snail season in 100 years. I'll admit, I was a little bit impatient, which is a common trait in us gardeners. The start of the season was very humid, cold, very wet. And so by the time it was late April, I was charging my seedlings rent to get a spot on the windowsill. So when the temperatures were finally on the rise, I of course couldn't wait to get my seedlings into their garden beds. But because the winter was so mild and the start of the year was very rainy, slugs and snails are thriving. And so me still being happy that I put all my seedlings into the garden was of course a little bit devastated to find out that after a few days, all those seedlings were reduced to little more than a few stalks. And I do mean every one of them, except for the spinach. Somehow they don't like spinach. Now I heard that most of Western Europe has this problem, and I've also heard that some veteran gardeners have never experienced this before. That being said, let's go over a few methods that can ward off these slimy little critters. Now before we start, I do have to mention that none of these methods are like foolproof, but hopefully they can help you nonetheless. Starting off with the first few methods, which fall into the category of whipping up barriers and creating difficult grounds. You see, slugs and snails don't really like sharp surfaces to slither on. Say that 5 times real fast. And they will try to avoid it if it's annoying enough. Now, if you like your coffee in the morning and you do have a slug problem, then don't throw away the coffee grounds. Save some of those coffee grounds and use them against slugs and snails. Not only is it great for your soil, but the coarse nature and the smell of the coffee might actually keep slugs and snails at bay, so it's a win-win. Add the coffee grounds richly around your plant to create a barrier. The same can be said of eggshells. Everybody needs a good breakfast in the morning, and it's a good idea to actually save some of those shells. If you're worried about raw egg, then cook them in the microwave or the oven first, and then crush them into fine, sharp pieces after that. The same as the coffee grounds, sprinkle them around your plants and you have another sharp surface against the slugs and the snails. Another barrier you can create is by putting down the spiky branches and stems of certain plants. Here I have the stem of a Japanese wineberry, which is full of little thorns. You can lay them down at the edge of a grow bed or cut them to size to protect a single plant. To mulch my potato beds, I both use straw and sawdust. Now, both did a great job at mulching the beds, however the straw also provided slugs and snails with a nice place to hide during the day, only to come out at night and eat the very plants that I mulched. However, my main crop potato bed that I mulched with the sawdust are relatively left alone, and the potatoes are looking in fine shape, to be honest, compared to the early potatoes that I have over here. I guess the sawdust is just a little bit too sharp for the slugs and snails to slither on, so that might be something to keep in mind when you're mulching your beds. Now onto traps and lures. These are meant to attract slugs and snails, either through smell or by giving them a place to hide. A common slug trap is little more than a pot put upside down. Once the day starts, slugs and snails will want to find a place to hide, and a pot gives them just that. You can collect them during the day and then throw them far away from your garden. Weirdly enough, slugs and snails go crazy for beer. I guess they're nature's worst alcoholics. If you fill a bowl of any kind with some dark, sweet beer, you can bet their slimy hides they will be there in a few hours. And then you can again collect them and throw them far away from your garden. Drink every time I say slugs and snails. No, don't do that. My idea on these kind of traps is that yes, they can be effective at luring all the slugs and snails into one spot. However, that is often close to your garden and you might not want that, so that is something to consider. The beer trap was really successful. I'm not going to show you because it's pretty gruesome. Our slithery friends are not without their own predators, of course. And so introducing or attracting them to your own garden might actually help you out, if you have the space, the money and the permission. Chickens, and especially dogs, are very precise slug hunters, and they will keep your garden clean. Now, I'm not allowed to have poultry here on my garden, but it might be an option for you. Hedgehogs and frogs or toads also like to hunt for slugs and snails. You can build tiny houses that hedgehogs can nestle in, or you can introduce a pond that will eventually attract frogs and toads to your garden. And that is actually something I'm considering of building and setting up in my garden. And don't forget one of the best looking hunters out there, you! Get a bucket and start checking your crops. This is especially effective in the evening or the morning, when slugs are still active. But you might need a flashlight. Now onto the more gruesome ways to get rid of slugs and snails. Everybody knows that salt and snails do not mix. Well, they do mix, but there won't be a lot left of the snail. Now, if you're really desperate, you can add a barrier or a ring of salt around your plants, and it will keep the slugs and snails at bay. However, there are a lot of downsides to this. First of all, the salt can be washed or blown away easily by the rain or winds, and you don't want to oversaturate the soil of your garden with a lot of salt, so I would advise against this method. Then there are the nematodes. Now, nematodes are microscopic worm-like creatures that you can just buy online, and when they're introduced to the soil of your garden, they can invade the body of a slug or a snail. And then they will spread bacteria, and that will kill the slug or the snail. The nematode will then quickly reproduce, and they can potentially get rid of your slug problem really quickly. It's a bit of a nasty body snatcher alien thing, so ugh. And then of course there are commercially slug repellent granules and poisons and whatnot. Slugs and snails will eat these and they will die. Simple as that. I know that there are eco-friendly versions of these, but I just don't really like the idea of using them in my garden. But I do understand if people want to use them if they are desperate. Lastly, a few honorable mentions. Some people put copper wire or copper wire mesh around their plants. Apparently, copper reacts with the mucus of the slugs or snails, which is like the slimy part of them, and it gives off a zap. So slugs and snails will try to avoid copper if they can. And finally, slugs and snails don't like the smell of garlic. So what you can do is chop up a few cloves and sprinkle that around your plants. Or what you can do is take 2 full bulbs of garlic and boil them in 2 liters of water for about 30 minutes. Leave it to cool overnight, put it in a spray bottle and then spray it on your plants. Slugs and snails won't like the smell of it and they will stay away from your plants. Well, I hope these tips are helpful in your battle against the slugs and the snails. But are there any other methods that I haven't mentioned yet? Help us all out and leave them in the comments below. Good luck, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.